In the shop today, we've got a wrecked 2024 BMW X3, and we're gonna be fixing it up. So this car came from an auction. It actually just got delivered a couple of hours ago, and I can't wait to dig into it. It's a 2024 with only 7,000 miles, and it doesn't look too bad, but we all know how that goes. Whenever something doesn't look that bad, usually there's something else being hidden underneath it. So we're gonna strip it down and see exactly what we've got here. But first, let me show you around. This does run and drive. All right, so the main damage is right here up in the front, and primarily just on the lower front. So the driver's side seems like it's all good. The hood's not fully closing. The more expensive items, like the headlights, seem like they're all good. But when we scroll down a little bit, now you can start seeing the picture. A lot of that stuff is bent. Seems like somebody took this thing off-road a little bit. And it might just be me, but that wheel looks a little tilted. So that front wheel is definitely a little tilted. We've got some gap issues right here. But hey, once again, the headlights are still okay. The grills, the active grills, seem to be okay. And this might just be that the hood's not latched all the way, but we'll see. We got a lot of fingerprints all over it. No airbags are blown. The inside, super clean for the most part. When we come around to the back, it's gonna be a tight squeeze. Like I said, we've got a lot of stuff going on. I just thought I would try to go ahead and fix this since it just came in. That seems to be the only damage, is this rear diffuser section's popped out. But then we can see the tow hook cover is missing. So chances are, this car went into a ditch and it was pulled out by the back. Now we can really see how tilted that is. It's got a lot of negative camber, and this is not a stance car. And on top of that, this is an X drive. Now we can start seeing a little bit more gap issues right here on the front fender. The gap is a lot bigger down here compared to the top. Let's open the hood and see what we've got. Under the hood, it doesn't seem too bad. Like I said, this only has 7,000 miles. So I mean, everything should look, for the most part, pretty new. Now this strut tower, that's what I'm worried about, is that bent. Now there's only one way to find out how bad it is by tearing everything off. So this is my procedure. I'm just gonna do a time lapse. We're gonna pull the bumper off, we're gonna get the wheels off, take a look at the suspension, start seeing what all is actually mangled. There's some stuff I can already see, like some busted brackets, some bent brackets, but we're not gonna really be able to get the whole picture until we take it all off. I wish I could put it up on the lift, but the Datsun is still in the middle of a lot of big things going on. We should have a big update on that here soon, but until then, we're just going to have to work on the ground and see what we can find. All right, we've got the battery disconnected, so now we can start taking everything apart. So now I can actually work, because Selena's down here, so now I don't have to film myself. Kudos to all the YouTubers that do this all on their own. Like it already takes twice as long with Selena filming. Now the people that are doing it on their own, that's got to be ridiculous. They must take a week on something that should take one day. So kudos to you guys that do it all on your own. Gosh, it does not want to come out. How do you still take these out then? Just gotta be careful I don't drill into something behind it. That obviously didn't work. So cutting it does work. Look at all this dirt. Oh, these are one-time use. Good job, BMW. Just like all your cooling systems. This plastic, why would you put one-time use clips? That's the stupidest thing. Just so we can spend more money. I guess it makes disassembly easier. Okay, now you just cut everything. They're like plastic rivets. There's gotta be a better tool for this. This would be helpful to help some body shop friends. Now we just gotta figure out how to pop this out. And it goes behind the fender somehow. Open the door, please.
Maybe a tap there.
Bam. Let's save this so we don't have to buy a new one. All right, now I'm going to take off the fender liner so we can actually see the real damage, and then we might even take the fender off. There's so much dirt everywhere that's going to fall out. Fix this too, so we don't have to buy a new one. That'll have to be like $30 or $40 right there. So all we need to buy is this lower fender liner that goes to the bottom of the bumper, and we also need the headlight cover. Look, buddy, ready? Ready? It's fully charged. I haven't even touched it yet. I got a new Milwaukee M12 stubby and it's taking off lugs. It's dirty now. I guess I gotta take the sticker off.
Oh my god.
Wow. I've been using my Rigid for 5 years, 6, 7, 8 years now. That's crazy. And it still works. It's just not powerful enough. I was waiting on that Milwaukee sponsorship. It never came, so I just had to buy it. Be like that. I wonder if this one is missing a chunk or if this one's just low. Oh, yep, missing a chunk. There's a chunk that popped out. They can't see it, can they? Same thing on the other side. Hopefully that does the trick. All right, now we're at the fun stuff. Taking out all of the dirt so we can see everything. Oh, right in my socks. Well, I don't think this one's gonna be reusable. What you think? You could get creative. All right. Just like mining for rocks. Oh, look at that. There's a whole chunk right there. I didn't even realize. I don't think this is what they had in mind as far as sports activity. connector on the bottom of that. All right, so we've got pretty much all the front end figured out. We know we need a transmission cooler because it's bent, it's not leaking. We need the auxiliary radiator. It's also bent but not leaking. And then we need the regular radiator, which is bent and leaking. So once we get all of that, all the mounting stuff for the most part is not too bad. Just that one bracket on the front right is all bent, which is pushing the radiator and all that stuff a little out of whack. Now with that being said, one thing I did notice, a lot of the BMW parts, they have part numbers on them, they have stickers, and they also have a date of manufacturing, right? So all of the front bumper components, they're all manufactured in 2025. The car was manufactured in April of 24, so a lot of the other components are manufactured in 24. So what that means is usually this bumper has been replaced at some point, along with some of the plastics. All of the metal components, they're all 24. So none of that stuff was replaced, just the bumper itself. So who knows what the history is on that. Now, with that being said, this bumper, that is one thing I do like about the newer BMWs. Everything is modular. So this bumper itself is very modular as well. All of the lower trim pieces, they all separate in a sense. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna separate all of the broken parts. The more amount of money that we can save here, the better. Now, I don't think I really mentioned it before, but this car is going to be for my dad. For my parents really. So we're not too worried about as much of the aesthetic. Obviously we want it to look right. It's a 2024 X3. So we're gonna try to make it look as good as we can. It is a salvage title. So we're not expecting to, you know, make it like a brand new one that you can go buy, clean title. We're just trying to make it so it's a nice car for my dad to drive around. So we don't want it to also look jank. So we're gonna get it as bright as we can without spending too much money. All the stuff that's remaining on here besides the radiators is going to stay as it is. The fender has a very small bend in it. We'll try to do some PDR, which I don't know how to do PDR, but we'll try to figure that out. We'll try to fix that a little bit. We'll realign the headlights a little bit, realign the hood, the fender a little bit. All that stuff is going to be realigned. The other thing that I noticed is that negative camber that I mentioned earlier on the front right strut. So I'm going to go ahead and order those struts, get all the radiators ordered, and now I'm just going to figure out what all we need as far as the bumper goes to get all that sorted. And then the metal components that are on here, the only ones that are really bent is that lower support, along with the bracket for that lower support. The actual bumper reinforcement bar has a little bit of bend on this tab right here, but for the most part, it just needs to be pushed down. Besides that, this bar, it's aluminum. Just where it mounts to this bumper reinforcement is a little bent, which I can bend back. That's not a problem. So we'll get that bent back, and then we'll get everything realigned, and that should be good to go. Moving on with the bumper. Now, this car does not have the sensor that goes on the bottom, like that little, it's like a little dome-looking sensor. So it doesn't have that. It has the 360 cameras. It's got driving assistant, I believe, as well. But it doesn't have that little round-looking camera or whatever. It's a sensor that's down there. That actually saves us a lot. It does have the parking sensors in the front. One of the things that you'll see here is all of this bottom half is modular. So there are some parking sensors on this section that's broken that we're going to take off. So these parking sensors, the sensors themselves can pop out. You just pull the tabs apart. There we go. This one has been replaced before, it seems like, because there's glue all around it. Next thing, we're going to try to take some of these covers off. This one's still good. This one, I'm pretty sure I could probably heat it back and get it back to where it needs to be, because the tabs themselves are fine. But we'll see. If it's not too expensive, we'll buy one of these as well. All right, next up, this whole lower section, we're going to try to get that removed. So here's the main damaged components. I could probably try to fix this, but instead of spending hours trying to fix this, we'll see how much this is and see if we can get that ordered as well.
With the front bumper removed, now I'm going to start getting all the plastics removed so we can see a little bit more of the fender, as well as removing the headlight itself. Now, the main thing with the fender is the fender gaps. The fender itself only has a little bit of damage on one of the corners near the actual headlight itself, but that's not major at all. We really want to take out this headlight, make sure all the brackets behind it are good, and then see if we can adjust the fender gap itself. Now, adjusting the fender gap is tricky because the gap on the top is actually not that bad. It's almost identical to the driver's side. It's all in the bottom. The tabs on the bottom of the fender, that's where we can make a little bit of adjustments. After spending a lot of time adjusting that fender and just getting it as close to where we can, now I'm going to start removing all of the components so we can take out all of the cooling system. The radiator, the aux radiator, as well as the transmission cooler itself. So in order for us to do that, we do have to remove parts of the plastics up front, the radiator mounts. There's a bunch of brackets that hold a lot of the stuff in. And then we've got a couple of bent mounts as well for that lower reinforcement brace. Here you can actually see how bent the coolers are. And all of this kind of travels because all of it's set up as one assembly, although they all come apart. So we're going to start by removing all of the brackets, get the radiator mounts off because that's what's holding the radiator in place. And then we can actually remove the entire cooling system, including the fan assembly. Now, a lot of the plastics and a lot of the rubber, like air dam kind of setup, is not really damaged that much. Some of the bracing is a little bent, but it's aluminum, so that should be very easy to mend back. Now, just removing all these plastics just makes it easier to see if there's any other hidden damage underneath.
So we've got a lot of this front end torn apart. We're almost at the point of putting stuff back together. So one thing that I was hoping was not going to be a big deal was going to be both of the radiators. I knew the transmission cooler was bent. It's not leaking, but I know it was bent. But one of the radiators is leaking. I believe it's the aux one that's in the front. Now that is the most expensive part that's so far that we've really got across that's broken and that we're going to have to replace. So one thing I'm going to do first, I'm just going to try to remove this whole thing as an assembly because all this stuff is kind of packaged together, and then we can separate everything off of the car. Just makes it a little bit easier. So we're going to be draining coolant. The transmission cooler, we're going to have some transmission fluid coming out. So I'm just going to try to make this as quick as I can so I can cap it. This car only has 7,000 miles. It's about a year old, so none of these fluids technically need to be changed. So I want to try to save as much of that transmission fluid as we can and just speed up this process. Let's get right to it. So on these transmission cooler lines, they're different than some of the previous iterations on BMW chassis. They've got a tab. It's kind of like the fuel pressure release tab. A lot of other manufacturers do this, so we need to take out that green tab, push that out, and then that should unlock the hose to come off. Here's a quick tip for whenever you're taking off any kind of hoses that are stacked on top of each other. You always want to start with the one that's at the very, very bottom. Because if you start with the one that's on top of there, then that's just going to leak onto the fitting underneath. It's going to make everything slippery. So you start with the bottom one and then you work your way up. And whenever you're doing stuff that has multiple types of fluid, you don't really want the coolant and oil and all that stuff to mix. So I always like to start with oil because it's a lot more viscous, so you can predict where it's going to go. So you take out the oil first and then you move on to any of the coolant stuff. So you can move the oil container out of the way. Let's see if I can get this in one shot. So once you get this green tab to pop up, it's going to bottom out and then you can pull off the hose. And they're both off. Okay, here comes the coolant. Or not. Let's see this top one next. Now, just gotta take off this connector. So I went and ordered one of these brackets, brand new. Now I compared the new one to this, and the only thing that's bent really is just this section right here. And this is what the radiator actually mounts to. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna put this bracket back on, bend this back, because the other side is a little tweaked as well. We'll bend both of those back, get them straight, then it should be fine. All it's doing is holding the radiator. And then the only other thing that kind of got damaged is this bolt. So I didn't order a new one of these bolts. I am going to order it now. So in the meantime, we're going to replace it with this. Same thread, same length, but obviously we want the same OEM one, which is accessible even after everything is put together. Only thing we have to remove is like the fender liner up in the front. So that's going to take a couple days to get here. We don't have a couple days. We're just trying to get this car back on the road. So we're just going to put this back on, bend it, and we should be good. Got both of them straightened out. I ended up using this small little vise. Got it viced on there. I didn't have a long enough adjustable crescent wrench, because what I really needed is these jaws to be longer. So probably like right about here. And I could have made a tool, just cut up some metal, but this vise worked just fine. It doesn't need to look pretty, it just needs to work. And it's not like cracked or anything like that, so that should be fine. This one I did beat on it a little bit, so it's got a little bit discoloration. But it's aluminum, it's gonna be fine, it's not gonna rust or anything like that. And we should be ready to start putting the cooling system back together. Two down. Those are all on. Next up is going to be the transmission cooler lines. Okay, they're both on.
With all the new coolers, radiators, everything assembled, now we can actually fill everything up and see if there's anything leaking. I start out doing this by just filling up with distilled water. We're still going to try to maintain that 50-50 ratio, so I'm just going to fill it up a little bit with distilled water. Now, the X3 does have two different reservoirs. One's for the low cooling circuit, the other one's for the high cooling circuit.
Well, that's not going to help me figure out if it's leaking or not.
So one of the things that I mentioned at first was this wheel was sitting a little crooked and the camber was just very negative. So I'm anticipating that this strut is bent. Visually it looks a little bent to me. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this strut off. This one had really bad negative camber. So we're going to replace this one, and then I'm going to measure the distance between the wheel and the strut assembly and see if that matches up on the driver's side. Because the camber is not really adjustable on here. You could probably hollow some stuff out, put different top hats, all of that. We're just trying to keep everything as factory as we can. This car only has 7,000 miles, so even if we replaced one side, should be okay, shouldn't be that big of a deal. So to replace the strut, just like on most other vehicles, pretty straightforward. On this, we've got the sway bar link attached to it, then we've got a bolt and nut through the bottom, and then we've got the bolts securing the top hat. The only thing that's different is this is a very press fit. So you actually have to separate the spindle, and we're going to use this tool to help separate it. You can also use something to like pry it apart. That just damages the spindle since it's all aluminum. We want to try to use as, you know, whatever tools make it easier. It's so frustrating. Put on a space. Keep going. Okay. I love this tool. It's nice. Should have done this a long time ago. The rigid's good. Still use the rigid. But that Milwaukee stubby, like, you know when you just put like an exhaust on or a new intake and it just sounds and just feels different? That's exactly what it feels like. It just feels more sophisticated, nicer. All right, so right now, the strut is completely removed from the spindle as far as the bolt pinching it together. So now we need to separate the pinch, and that's where this comes in. Then you just tighten that down, and it'll separate it, and then this can just fall down. So I've got the tool in there, I've got the spindle spread open, and I mean, everything moves, but the strut on the bottom is bent, so it's like, should be straight, it's made for a tight fit, so it should just slide right out. But since we've got a little kink in it on the bottom of the strut, it's getting held up, so I can't really wiggle it out. I try to hit it with the mallet, so we're gonna have to get a little creative.
One thing with X-Drive cars is they are always more difficult when it comes to removing the front suspension. So we did have to resort to getting some spring compressors to compress that spring. I even tried removing the top hat and all of that, but none of that stuff really seemed to work. So we got the spring compressors in place, compressed the spring a little bit. That reduces the overall size of the strut assembly, and I was able to just remove the spring first since the top hat was already off, and then I was able to take the strut the rest of the way out.
And now we can actually see where all of our negative camber was coming from. That's crazy. But it's better that this bent rather than the spindle or the strut tower, any of that, just that.
Just like the trouble we had removing the stock strut assembly from the car, mainly because of the X-Drive and just the spring itself, this is why I love lowering springs, because when you put lowering springs, you don't necessarily have to worry about trying to get this big spring, the stock one, compressed and reinstalled. I just had a really tough time just getting all this stuff set up with my spring compressor that I usually use. So I ended up having to resort to a more of a creative solution where I used the spring compressors and the strut assembly itself and was able to latch that spring onto the strut assembly using the compressors. This is kind of what the factory does. They have a special tool for this, obviously, but we made it work, got the top hat on, and everything was just fine. Now, I left the spring compressed so that way we could actually fit the strut assembly into the car without getting in too much trouble. Since it is X-Drive, the more you move the spindle and you try to wiggle it around, sometimes the axle will pop out of the CV joint. So you want to make sure when you're putting everything back together, you're popping it back in, and that way there's nothing binding. We still use that pinch spreader tool to make sure that the spindle was wide enough to accept the new strut, and then we just use a jack from underneath on one of the control arms to make sure that we're able to get it bottomed out. Now, there is a locating pin on the strut that needs to sit in the gap of that spindle where we're spreading it, so that's another thing you want to ensure. And then the other thing you want to ensure is make sure you have the right strut for each side. These are directional. There's one for the left, there's one for the right. So whenever you're doing something like this, really on any car, there's usually some kind of locating pins if there's not a bolt through the strut assembly itself. Since we've already got all of the cooling system in and nothing's leaking as far as I can tell, I went ahead and started assembling all of the plastics. Now, there are a lot of brackets, a lot of little tabs that secure everything together to make this as one whole package unit. So you want to make sure everything is directional, everything is put back how it was, and then we can finally get the cooling fan installed as well. Now, we got lucky. The cooling fan was not damaged at all. It didn't get bent or anything, and it was able to slide right in and sit in all of the tabs.
Good.
All right, so we've got most of the front end reassembled. A couple of things that we're still missing. The radiator cover on the bottom, which I do have, which got to pop that in place. But before that, I got the active shutters in place. Now, I'm not a big fan of the active shutters, and ideally, I wouldn't want to put them back. But with this car being as new as it is, and it's not gonna be mine, so we're not gonna modify it or anything like that. We're just gonna keep it in as stock form as possible. So we're just gonna put the active shutters, the bottom one in as well. That's like $200 and almost $300 just for this little active shutter on the bottom. The top one wasn't damaged, so we're gonna put this lower one in. I did have to bend one of these tabs back. We've got all the fasteners on here. First, I'm gonna open it, see what it looks like, and then go from there. Now, I'm sure there's a way to delete it, and I probably would have done that if this was my car. I would have just deleted it and went on with my life. But I would have also put an X3M bumper on. Would have probably already swapped something else into it. I probably wouldn't have bought this to begin with. I would have bought M40i instead of the X-Drive 30i. So not my car, just gotta get it fixed, keep it as factory standards as we can. So with any BMW electronics, when you buy something from the dealer, once it's open, you're pretty much stuck with it. So voila, almost $300 of plastic with one motor. So what this does, those flaps in there, they open and close. So when the car is cold, they want, for emissions, they want the car to warm up faster, because when the car is warm, that's when it's the most efficient. So these flaps close, same with those on the grill, and it just lets everything warm up a little bit quicker.
So before installing this lower air shutter assembly, I did have to bend some of the tabs back, get all the hardware removed off the factory bumper reinforcement, and then we were able to actually get all this stuff secured. Now, one thing that I did do, or that I didn't do, was install the air dam on the passenger side, or the air duct, I should say. So you'll see that later on, where I have to kind of remove some of this stuff to put it back in place. But hey, sometimes you're just trying to get everything assembled, and you do have to follow steps, especially when it comes to a lot of these interlocking plastic pieces.
Next up, we've got this lower reinforcement bar. Here's the old one, all floppy and lopsided. This is all aluminum, so technically, if we really wanted to, we could spend a couple hours, heat this up, and get it back to how it should be. Or you can buy an aftermarket one. This was, I believe, less than $100, and we got it from carparts.com. We've actually worked with them before. I was surprised that they had some of these newer, so this is a 24 X3, so I was surprised they had some of these parts. But yeah, we've got this, and then we've got the big reinforcement bar as well from carparts.com. So surprising, like I said, newer car, they still have some stuff, so check them out if you need something for your car. Now, with that being said, one thing I like to do whenever I've rebuilt a lot of cars. Now, we haven't shown a lot of them, but over the years, you know, some of these things, the parts take a little while to get here, and by the time you have everything jumbled apart, you got everything torn apart, half the stuff is broken, half the stuff is missing. So what I like to do is I always put the fasteners back on the original part, and I don't get rid of anything, even like the plastic scraps, and I don't throw anything away until the very, very end, once all the finishing touches are done. Because you never know when you might need a little bracket here, or something might be a little bit different on the new part that you ordered. For example, the part number on this lower shutter, it has 3 different types of shutters that you can get. So you never know if you had a different revision or whatnot. So for example, right here, we've got these bolts on this that we're gonna reuse on both sides. So we've got those, that way we don't have to go searching for them, and we have to label them or nothing like that. Now with that being said, this should just slide right in. Keyword, should. Where's my black mallet? Now we've got the small bracket. So all this stuff is still loose until we've got all the stuff attached. Then I'll go back in and tighten everything. So we still have a vent that goes through right here for the active shutter, and that vent goes all the way into the fender liner as well. So we're going to be reusing the one that was stock. It just had like a little tab broken off right here. We're going to have to figure out that provision. So next up, we're going to have the bracket that goes right here, the big reinforcement, and then from there, we'll start working on the bumper, the fender liners, and fix whatever else is broken. So here's the old one. Here's the new one. Right there. Very obvious to see that it's bent. Which you would think, this is some like hefty metal right here. I'm surprised it bent the way that it did, and none of the other stuff really bent with it. Besides the strut, obviously. In hindsight, I should have put this on before, but in order for me to get this on, I have to take the bracket off so it slides through, and then it gets fed into this active shutter. At least we don't have the bumper on already.
Now that I'm putting this bracket back in place, I came to the realization of the air dam or air duct, whatever you want to call it. Because it does have to slide through the bracket, and that bracket does need to interlock into that air shutter, that lower air shutter. And there's really no way to get it in place with everything else assembled, so I did have to remove part of that air shutter, and then I was able to get everything secured and lined up.
Look at that. Now it just looks like somebody just went over the parking stop a little bit. Not a ditch. That's our goal here. We just want to make it look like someone ran over a parking stop. Like one of those little parking concrete bumpers. Not a whole ditch. That's our goal. Alright, so here's the bottom radiator cover. $120 for this. Crazy. Alright. $100 and almost $200 for this too.
Now, as I mentioned before, this bumper is very modular, so there's a lot of brackets, there's a separate harness. For us, we got lucky. The upper part, the more expensive part of the bumper was okay. There was a little bit of damage here and there, which I was able to adjust and make it work. But the bumper wants to lay flat. A lot of the structure, a lot of the bends and curves are coming from that lower molded plastic piece. So that's the one that was really tricky to just get everything lined up with some of the tabs that were a little bit broken and whatnot. The only thing that really helped in this whole situation was the heat gun. The heat heats up the plastic, makes it a little bit more malleable. Even for some of the items that were a little bit damaged as far as the shape goes, the heat brought it back and made it a little bit more malleable, and we were able to mold it back to the shape that it should have been. But once that was on, I got all the rest of the bumper assembled, got all of the grills, everything installed on it, and a lot of this stuff, like I said, just snaps into place. There's not really many fasteners or anything that hold it there. So you just have to make sure all the tabs are lined up, and then you do have to move some things around before you can get everything snapped in place. Now, to install the bumper, same thing with the bumper. It's got a lot of brackets and whatnot that it snaps into. The grill is one of them, and then there's brackets underneath the headlights. So you want to make sure everything's lined up before you start pushing so you don't break any tabs. And the final piece of the puzzle was the actual grill itself. Oh, I'm so happy that this grill is not like the G80s. It's still a pretty big grill, but I mean, it's not the whole front bumper, let's put it that way. The only bolts on the bumper itself are just these 2 brackets on each side, or 1 bracket on each side, and then that secures the bumper to the fender. Then the last piece of the puzzle was this lower, I guess, trim piece that we fixed up that we were able to reuse, and this just snaps into place like everything else. With the fender liners and everything in place, it's finally time to put the wheels and tires back on. Now, I did get these 2 tires replaced in the front, mainly because the 2 that were on there were damaged from the wreck. I guess when they hit that ditch, it actually ripped the tire. We did stick with the run flats because the rear are still run flats, and all the tread depth and everything is almost identical across the board. This car only has 7,000 miles, so everything is still pretty new for the most part. We're coming down to the final stretch, especially when you put all these plastics on. We're able to confirm there were no leaks. We let all of the coolant, all that stuff got pre-mixed. We still need to bleed the cooling system, but at least there were no leaks from any of the hoses or the coolers themselves. So there was nothing really wrong with the side mirror, besides a small little crack right here. But what will happen over time is with that crack, water's gonna get in, and then it's gonna start malfunctioning, and this side mirror is like $1,200 just for the whole side mirror. So we didn't want to take that chance. This little corner light piece, it's like 50 bucks. So we went ahead and bought it. Actually, it's like $60. So we went ahead and bought it. We're going to swap it out. It's just a little LED strip. We should be good to go. But you do have to take apart the entire mirror. Like the whole case, everything. But at least you have to take the door panel off, so. This, you gotta lift this corner up first, and then this slides out. All right. So now we've got to get this camera onto that corner. The final piece of the puzzle. Well, actually, we still need to find a tow hook. But we won't be needing that, so should be fine. There we go. How's it going? Just through there. Oh, that's too loose. That's just gonna fly off. Now with this new tow hook cover being over $40, it felt a little loose, so I wanted to make sure that was very secure. So I did spend some time off camera kind of zip tying it, so just in case it does fall out, it's not gonna fall out of the bumper entirely. And then we also put some double-sided tape to get a little bit more tightness where it fits, so that way it doesn't slip out.
All right. Hooking up the battery. Then we just gotta bleed the cooling system, make sure nothing's leaking, and then we can drive it.
Babe, hold on.
Turns on. Oh, all those lights are on. It wasn't on when we first got it, but I think it's because I had everything unhooked and I turned it on once before. So I'll just have to erase all that. But for right now, we gotta bleed the cooling system, so I'm gonna pull it out.
So it's running good. Alignment's actually good. Like it goes straight. All the warning lights are still on. I wanted to erase all the codes and everything, but we started driving instead. We got too excited. And the cooling system's still bleeding, so I'll erase the codes here in a little bit. We might even take it through a car wash or touchless car wash and see what happens. One thing that you should do whenever you get a new to you car is an oil change. Now this car is practically new with only 7,000 miles. This is probably its first oil change.
So we just finished doing an oil change on here. We took it for a spin last night for the first drive. We also did a touchless car wash. Car looks great. The only damage that's still remaining is just on that front bumper where it was pretty much hit the whole way. There's a little bit of paint chipping there. The bumper's a little scuffed up, but that's not that big of a deal. Everything else on this car is still original. All of the original body panels, all of the original paint, and it only has 7,000 miles. So I would say this is actually one of those few times that we have a Copart success story that didn't result in a part out. Like we have another X3 over there that is a Copart failure, but this X3 came out great. All it needs is a new driver, and all it really took was just a couple weeks. Most of that was waiting on parts, a little bit of elbow grease, a little bit of ingenuity, knowing how to look up parts, and we got it done. Now, I'm gonna go take this car to my dad so he can start driving it around. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have any questions, leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.